Ryu!
Sonia, you cannot follow me.
What? Wait.
My path leads through the land of the dead.
Land of the Dead Road to Fiddler's Green. Oh boy, does this bring back memories. It's a zombie game loosely tied to the movie, published by Groove Games, developed by Brainbox Games, and released on October 20th, 2005, 2 days after Fear no less. Huh. It was also one of the first, if not the first game I ever reviewed when I first started YouTube after being inspired by Armeg21. And I reviewed the demo when I made that video because that's all I had at the time. Like I just said, this is when I was first starting out, I was trying to find my way, and it showed because I was desperately trying to be like Armeg, and I failed epically. What a surprise. But I left it at that, and I moved on. Fast forward to 2014, I've found my YouTube rhythm to dance to, I gave the full game a spin, and after that I was wondering what the hell everyone was smoking when they reviewed Fiddler's Green back in 05, because yeah, it's not Left 4 Dead or Killing Floor, but come on, a 1.9 out of 10? Really, GameSpot? Probably had something to do with graphics, we were all graphic whores back then. Don't get me wrong, the game is pretty janky and it's not going to win any awards, but there's a fun little game here if you're willing to forgive its problems, which aren't game-breaking. So the story takes place before the Land of the Dead movie, and it stars a guy named Jack, a farmer living out in what I guess is Pennsylvania. One day he sees some random dude standing on his property acting all strange, and when he goes to check on the guy, it's a zombie, and soon his entire house is swarmed by zombies. He fights them off and holds out for a while, but once he starts running low on food and other stuff, he tries to make it to the city where he hears there's a safe haven. I'm guessing that city is Pittsburgh, the city the movie took place in. I don't know, the name of the city was never dropped, it was only referred to as the City of the Living. But yeah, the whole story is about Jack trying to get to Pittsburgh. All of the story is told through Jack narrating, and it's all told in the past tense because the opening of the game shows the ending right away. Jack is in Pittsburgh by the time the game starts, and he's just telling you how he got there. Jack is also the only real character. He meets like 3 other people along the way, only one of whom talks, and that guy only has a few lines in the game, no less, not even in the cutscenes. Jack doesn't directly talk to anyone throughout the whole game. There's one other voice you'll hear along the way, which is the newscaster on the TV and later the radio, but he's not really a character. So there's only Jack, and when I call him the only character, I use that word very loosely because there's no character development. There's maybe 10 minutes of story here, so if you're expecting something that isn't paper thin and designed to just move the game along, you're not going to find it here. As far as graphics go, Fiddler's Green runs on the Unreal Engine 2, and it's not pushing the engine by any means. Even though it was released in late 2005, it looks like something that would have been more at home in 2001. Muddy textures, janky animations, small levels, and very simple models for just about everything. Yeah, Fiddler's Green is no looker. I mean, shooting zombies to pieces looks great, that's probably the best looking thing in the game, and we have a few nice levels to look at, like the farm, a theater, and an atrium, but most of these levels are not like these 3. Many of them are a bunch of flat, gray hallways, and even those that aren't strictly hallways, look around. Gray all over the place. It's very boring. But it's not a deal breaker. Graphics don't make a game, alright? We can't expect every game to look top-notch, and besides, Fiddler's Green was a budget game sold for $20 instead of the usual $50. Yeah, that's what new games cost back then. So even if I was reviewing this back in 05, I would still cut it some slack. Okay, the graphics get the job done. Fiddler's Green not looking top of the line doesn't bother me. What does bother me is there's no widescreen resolutions, and the field of view is fucking atrocious. I sadly don't have any footage before I fixed it, but it was awful. Think Bad Company 2, remember how low that FOV was? Yeah, it's that bad. And there's no way to fix it in the options menu. There's hardly any options here that you can tweak. I had to get a fan-made patch off the internet to fix it, which did fix both problems. I could set the resolution and field of view to whatever I wanted. It was perfect. I had no problem after that. But it was a real pain in the ass to install. I had to use DG Voodoo 2, I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. I don't use it often, so it took a while to get it running, and sadly, I forgot how I did it. If I can remember it or somebody else does it and lets me know, I'll put the directions in the description. Sorry guys. Sound-wise, I'd say it's good enough. The game has a really unsettling, eerie atmosphere, which is fantastic. Background noises like creaking floors, distant growls of zombies. It does a good job of keeping you on edge and constantly looking over your shoulder, which you kind of have to, but I'll get to that one in a minute. The music is solid as well. It fades into the background after a while, and it doesn't need to do anything more than that. It helps the atmosphere without getting in the way, and I'd say the sound effects are all good enough as well. Especially when you hit a zombie in the face with a fire axe. That never gets old. As far as the voice acting goes...
I killed the strangers. It was them or me. The poor devils looked like they fell in a septic tank and festered for a few days. I'd never killed no one before, so I sure was real spooked.
Yeah, it's not exactly Shakespeare, but for what the actors had to work with, I can't complain. Of course, the main focus here is going to be Jack, obviously, and as I said before, he's telling you the story of how he got to Fiddler's Green. And if he was sitting down next to me in real life telling me his story, I could totally believe he's got some type of trauma shock from his experience with the zombie apocalypse. He's believable in who he is, and that's something that's hard enough to nail down in a big game with an experienced voice actor. Never mind a budget game with someone who's most likely never acted before or had very little experience at best. There's nothing I can say here that's bad about the sound. The worst thing I can point out, if you want to call it that, is there's a few royalty-free sound effects you can spot. You know, the ones that have been used countless times before. But if that's the worst thing you gotta worry about, then I'd say you got yourself a decent sound design if nothing else. Gameplay is where things get interesting. It's tough for me to explain how I feel about the gameplay because Fiddler's Green is very basic, yet very unique in many ways. So Fiddler's Green is a zombie game, and you obviously fight zombies, but that's all you fight. There's no humans, mutated animals, or anything else. There aren't even any boss fights, it's just zombies from start to finish. You got a few different types though. You got your regulars, ones that have melee weapons, ones that crawl around, and ones that puke and explode when they get close enough. Now the first thing you'll probably notice is how few of them there are. When you think of zombies, you probably think of huge crowds as far as you can see, but that's not here. Most of the time you fight anywhere from 2 to 4 of them, and never any more than 6. Another thing that will stand out not too long after you start playing is how stupid they are. I know that sounds odd. Stupid zombies? Well, yeah, in comparison to every other game with zombies that I've played, these are the dumbest zombies I've ever seen. These guys get stuck on just about everything. It's fucking hilarious seeing a zombie standing in front of a small pile of rubble just staring at you like, oh, just you wait till I figure out how to walk around this thing. I've even seen them get stuck in doorways that are wide open. Like, there's nothing stopping them, but for some reason they can't move. But my personal favorite, in less common cases, they completely shut off at random and decide they don't want to work anymore. Like this asshole right here. Like, what is he doing? Like I said, less common, but it does happen, and it's pretty funny when you see it. So even though the levels are small and narrow, in many cases, after you've had a bit of practice, it's easier to just run right by them. Very rarely will you find yourself outnumbered or outmatched in this game. Now that doesn't mean you can be careless, because you can't. Jack can't move quickly, even when sprinting, and that only lasts for about 5 seconds before you're almost stuck in place for a few seconds while he gets his breath back, and you can die in just a few hits. Not only that, but the zombies at times just poof into existence. Sometimes behind you, like a room you had just left, and can sneak up and attack you from behind. Trust me, that happens too, and what I said earlier about the distant growls of zombies being everywhere, you can never be sure if it's background noise or if there's a zombie behind you. But overall, the zombies are easy enough to fight, more so once you figure out the weapons. It might not seem like it, but Land of the Dead has a pretty interesting setup when it comes to weapons, despite it being a mix of standard guns and melee weapons. Remember back in the 90s and early 2000s, where every weapon in a first-person shooter was different from each other? That's the case here, which caught me by surprise. You see, by the mid-2000s, that was starting to be phased out of shooters. It was also the time where Call of Duty was getting popular. Go figure. And by the 2010s, it was pretty much gone. For the longest time after that, the only real difference between the guns was the rate of fire and maybe how far they could shoot. But that's not the case with Fiddler's Green. Just about every weapon is different. For example, there's two pistols, the revolver and the Glock, but only the revolver can get headshots. The Glock takes 5 bullets to kill a zombie, but it's always 5, no matter where you hit them. This is the type of stuff that you need to learn, but that's what makes it fun. In fact, I'm not going to tell you guys anything more about the guns because I want you to learn it on your own, but I will say the only weapons that behave similar to each other are the melee weapons. They all do the same thing except for the fire axe, and if you ask me, the melee weapons are pretty useless. They have weak and strong attacks which you control with the left and right mouse button respectively, and the weak attacks barely do anything. They don't even stun the zombies when you hit them, so you're stuck using strong attacks all the time. Each strong attack has a slightly different timing that you have to get down, and it takes about 3 to 4 hits to kill a zombie. Except for the fire axe. This is the only weapon where the so-called weak attack is more useful than the strong attack because it can one-shot a zombie and be much quicker about it. But I found it was better to not take a melee weapon and just punch the zombies, because the strong punch is the fastest melee attack in the game that can knock a zombie down, and once you pick up a melee weapon, you can't use your hands anymore because you can't drop the weapon. You also don't get the fire axe until the hospital, and not too long after that, you're at the police station where you get a whole bunch of guns and ammo and don't have to worry about ammo anymore. It's a really strange setup. The first half of Fiddler's Green plays like a survival game where you don't have too much ammo, but once you get to the police station, the game is littered with ammo. It's interesting but strange. Now there's also a dismemberment system here in case you haven't noticed. You can shoot the limbs and heads off of zombies, but it's a little janky. Don't get me wrong, it works for the most part, but every once in a while something will happen that will make you go, wait, what the hell? Most of the time I didn't have a problem going around scoring multiple headshots in a row, but then a zombie came along where I had to shoot him multiple times in the head before he went down. There were even times where I was just pointing my gun in the general area of a zombie's head and I still got the headshot. It's so funny. It's not game-breaking though. I mean, the worst thing that happened is a zombie managed to get close, I shot him in the face, he didn't go down, and I was like, oh shit, and I had to get out of there. But I kind of like that. It kept me on edge because there was always that small chance that the headshot wasn't going to register. So again, I couldn't get careless out there. By the way, this doesn't happen with weapons that can't pull off headshots, so you don't have to worry about it there. That's pretty much it for the combat, but I want to point this one little detail out. If you try to use a Molotov where there's water and you hit the water, it doesn't do anything. I don't know why, but that little detail really sticks out to me. It's probably because I didn't expect to find something like that here. I mean, dare I say, I'm almost impressed. Oh, before I forget, another little thing I noticed. When a zombie drops in, like when they climb over a wall or fall out of a vent in the ceiling or something like that, when they're getting up, you can't hurt them. You can shoot them all you want, it won't do any damage. You have to wait until the animation of them getting up is done before you can shoot them, and you'll know when it's done because when they get up, there's a slight pause before they start moving, but still. Not sure if that was a glitch or if it was put in there intentionally to make it more challenging. It's really weird. But anyways, level design is about as straightforward as a highway in Kansas. Just follow the path, kill some zombies, or run past them, throw a switch, get an item, shit like that. And even in the levels that aren't strictly follow the line, very rarely will you have to use any brain power to get through them. Especially considering your objectives are flashed right on the screen, and anytime you have to throw a switch or get an item, it's highlighted in this big bright glow. I mean, you'd have to be fucking blind in order to miss it. Fiddler's Green is a very point A to point B kind of game. There's only a handful of times where Fiddler's Green doesn't follow this design to the letter, and even then, those areas don't take too much brain power to get through. Although I will say they did pack a few unexpected tricks, but still. If you have a little bit of brain power and reflexes that are quicker than a toddler, you'll be able to get through them just fine. It's a simple setup, but that's not a bad thing. Simplicity does have its upsides. Fiddler's Green keeps things moving at a good clip without much downtime, and thanks to the nearly non-existent backtracking, you won't find yourself wandering around like a headless chicken wondering where the hell to go next. Not only that, but you're also not getting jammed through every level on a fast track. You can explore them at your own pace. None of this tour guide railroad bullshit that was starting to appear around this time, and would soon go mainstream thanks to the soon-to-be-released Call of Duty 2. There's no forced scripted events, infinitely respawning zombies, or anything like that, which is always a good thing. Lastly, there's multiplayer, and much to my surprise, there's still a couple servers that are up every now and then. Sadly, every time I tried joining I couldn't get in, but I could host my own multiplayer game and even play alone. There's not much variety here though. You've only got 4 game types: Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, and Invasion, along with a few settings that you can tweak for each of them. Not much to write home about, but the Invasion mode did catch my interest. You're dropped into a small map with weapons and health pickups lying around, which will respawn, and you have to defend yourself against never-ending waves of zombies until the timer runs out. It's kinda like the Zombies mode from World at War. There's no score limit, you can set the time limit anywhere from 5 minutes to 2 hours, and you can have up to 6 people in a match, but I personally wouldn't have any more than 3, because the maps are very small and there probably won't be enough weapons and ammo to go around for 6 people. It didn't hold my interest for more than a couple matches, but it was still surprising to see. The only real downside here is not all of the maps are available for all of the modes. Each mode only has a certain set of maps you can use. Kind of a bummer. And that's it. Is Fiddler's Green worth playing? Yeah, I'd say it's worth giving it a try. I mean, it's not going to cost you anything, you can get it for free on myabandonware.com, which I left a link to along with all the patches and stuff you need to get it working right on modern computers, and I hear it has a decent modding community too. Like I said earlier, don't go into this expecting Left 4 Dead or Killing Floor because it's definitely not either of those, but it's not a 1.9 out of 10 either. There's a fun little zombie game here waiting to be appreciated, as long as you set your expectations right. Alright kids, thanks for watching. If you're already subbed to the channel or are about to, be sure to hit the bell so you get notified when I post a video, hit the like button, and give me some feedback. I don't care if it's good or bad.